The ultrasound photo was supposed to go to her best friend. Instead, Claire Whitmore accidentally sent it to a dead man's number. Or so she thought. Within hours, armed men appeared at her door. The number now belonged to Roman DeLuca, the most dangerous crime boss in New York, and he had questions about the baby's father. Questions Claire couldn't answer. Because Ethan Vale, the man who got her pregnant, had vanished 3 weeks ago with millions of Roman's dollars and secrets that could start a war. If you want to see how Claire survives what comes next, stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The clinic waiting room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Claire Whitmore sat in the corner chair, her phone clutched between both hands, staring at the screen like it might suddenly reveal answers she desperately needed. 8 weeks. The words from the doctor still echoed in her skull, hollow and impossible. 8 weeks pregnant. She'd come in thinking she had the flu. Some stomach bug that wouldn't quit. The exhaustion made sense. She'd been pulling double shifts at the restaurant since Ethan left. The nausea, the dizziness, the way her body felt like it belonged to someone else. All of it, she'd told herself, was just stress. The test results said otherwise. Her thumb hovered over the ultrasound photo the nurse had given her, already loaded into her messages. She needed to tell someone. Needed to hear another human voice say something, anything, that would make this feel less like drowning. Her best friend Maya would know what to do. Maya always knew what to do. Claire's vision blurred as she pulled up the contact. Her fingers shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone twice. She attached the image, that grainy black and white blob that was somehow a person, somehow growing inside her, and typed out 3 words. I need you. She hit send before she could overthink it. The phone slipped from her hands onto her lap. Claire pressed both palms against her eyes, trying to hold herself together in a public place where falling apart wasn't allowed. Her rent was already 2 weeks late. The electric bill sat unopened on her kitchen counter. She had maybe $400 in her checking account and a future that had just collapsed into something unrecognizable. And Ethan was gone. 3 weeks. 21 days since he'd kissed her goodbye before his business trip and never came back. His phone went straight to voicemail. His apartment, the nice one in Tribeca that she'd never quite understood how he afforded on a consultant's salary, sat empty, lease terminated. Even his LinkedIn profile had disappeared. At first she'd been worried, then angry. Now she was just alone. Her phone buzzed. Claire grabbed it, expecting Maya's face to fill the screen with that expression of fierce loyalty that had gotten them through college and 3 years of post-college chaos. Instead, the notification made her stomach drop. Message failed to deliver. She stared at the error, confused. She'd texted Maya yesterday. They'd made plans for brunch on Sunday. The number was right there in her favorites, the same one she'd been using for... Claire's breath caught. The contact name read Ethan. No. Her fingers flew across the screen, pulling up her message history with Maya. Different number. Completely different. The one she'd just sent the ultrasound to was Ethan's old cell. The one that had been going to voicemail for weeks. The one she'd meant to delete a dozen times but couldn't quite bring herself to erase. Oh, God, she whispered. The woman next to her glanced over, concerned, but Claire barely noticed. She was too busy staring at the delivered status that had just appeared beneath her message. Not failed, delivered. Someone had received that photo. Someone who wasn't Ethan, because Ethan's phone had been dead for 3 weeks. His number must have been recycled, given to someone new, and she'd just sent an ultrasound photo to a complete stranger with the words, I need you, attached. Claire's face burned. Her hands shook harder. She typed out a follow-up message, fingers clumsy with panic. Wrong number. I'm so sorry. Please delete that. 3 dots appeared immediately. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Whoever had the number was typing. They were going to respond, probably tell her she was an idiot, maybe make a joke about it. She'd apologize again, block the number, and pretend this mortifying mistake had never happened. The dots disappeared, then reappeared, then stopped again. Finally, a message came through. You sent this to Ethan Vale's old number. Claire's blood went cold. Yes, she typed back, throat tight. I didn't mean to. Wrong contact. Another pause. Longer this time. Where is he? She blinked at the screen. Read the message twice. A stranger had Ethan's old number and wanted to know where he was? That didn't make sense, unless… I don't know, she sent back. He's been gone for 3 weeks. Who is this? The response came faster this time. Someone he owes a debt to, a significant one. Claire's mouth went dry. Debt. Ethan had debts? He'd always seemed fine with money. More than fine. He'd taken her to restaurants she couldn't afford, bought her jewelry she'd never asked for, talked about his consulting work like it was boring but lucrative. She'd never questioned it because why would she? People didn't lie about things like that. Except apparently they did. I don't know anything about his debts, she typed. I haven't seen him since he left. But you're carrying his child. The words appeared on her screen like a physical blow. Claire's vision tunneled. This stranger, whoever they were, knew. Had looked at that ultrasound photo and made the connection, understood what it meant, understood that she was trapped in this situation with no way out and no one to help her. That's none of your business, she sent back, fingers clumsy. Everything involving Ethan Vale is my business. We need to talk. No. She typed it fast, decisive. Lose this number. Lose this. She blocked the contact before they could respond, then sat there staring at her phone like it had personally betrayed her. Her heart wouldn't slow down. The clinic walls felt too close. Someone out there knew about the baby. Someone Ethan owed money to, which meant what? A loan shark? A bookie? What kind of debts was this person talking about? Claire shoved her phone into her purse and stood on shaking legs. She needed to get out of here. Needed to get home, lock her door, and figure out what the hell was happening. The nurse at the desk called after her about scheduling a follow-up appointment, but Claire was already pushing through the exit into the cold November air. The walk back to her apartment took 15 minutes, long enough for her panic to shift into something harder. Anger, maybe, or just the crushing weight of betrayal finally settling into her bones. Ethan had left her pregnant and broke and completely alone, and apparently he'd done it while running from debts she knew nothing about. She climbed the 4 flights to her studio, unlocked 3 separate locks. The neighborhood wasn't great, but the rent was manageable, and stepped into the dim space that smelled like the Thai takeout she'd eaten 2 days ago. Dishes in the sink, laundry piled on the chair, the couch she'd found on Craigslist that still smelled faintly of someone else's cigarette smoke. This was where she lived. This was where she was supposed to raise a baby. Claire dropped her purse on the counter and pressed her forehead against the refrigerator, feeling the cool metal against her skin. She wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Just a horrible, empty ache in her chest where hope used to be. Her phone rang. Not a text. An actual call from a number she didn't recognize. Claire stared at it, watching the screen light up and vibrate in her hand. She should ignore it, should let it go to voicemail and pretend this whole day had never happened. She answered. Hello? Miss Whitmore. A man's voice. Deep, controlled, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Not threatening exactly, but not friendly either. My name is Roman DeLuca. I believe you blocked my number a few minutes ago. Her stomach dropped. How did you… I have resources, he said simply, and I have questions about Ethan Vale that need answering. I already told you. I don't know where he is. I believe you, but you know other things that might help me find him. Claire gripped the phone tighter. I don't know anything. We dated for 6 months. He left. That's all. He stole from me. Roman's voice didn't rise, but something in it shifted, hardened. $12 million and data that could destroy my organization. Then he disappeared. Now I find out he left behind a pregnant girlfriend who claims to know nothing. You understand why that's difficult to believe. $12 million. The number hit her like a physical blow. Claire sat down hard on her couch, legs giving out. That's not… He worked in consulting. He didn't have access to that kind of… Ethan Vale never worked in consulting, Roman said. He worked for me. And 3 weeks ago, he betrayed that trust in a way that cannot be forgiven. The room spun. Claire pressed her free hand against her forehead, trying to breathe. You're lying. I'm not. And we both know it. She did know it. Deep down, in the part of her that had noticed the late-night phone calls Ethan always took in the other room. The expensive watch he'd claimed was a gift from a client. the way he'd deflected every time she asked about meeting his friends or family. She told herself it was fine, that some people were just private, that love meant trusting even when you didn't understand. She'd been an idiot. "What do you want from me?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "A meeting, tomorrow. There's a restaurant in Midtown." "No." The word came out firmer than she felt. "I'm not meeting with you. I don't know you. I don't know what Ethan did. And I'm not getting involved in whatever this is." Silence on the other end. Long enough that Claire almost thought he'd hung up. "Miss Whitmore," Roman said finally, "you're already involved. The moment Ethan left you carrying his child, you became part of this situation. I'm offering you a chance to cooperate. That offer won't last forever." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact. There are people looking for Ethan who are far less patient than I am. If they find out about you, they won't," Claire interrupted, "because I don't know anything worth finding out." "I hope you're right." The line went dead. Claire sat there holding her silent phone, pulse hammering in her ears. $12 million. Data that could destroy an organization. People who were less patient than Roman DeLuca, whoever the hell he was. She was in trouble. Real trouble. The kind that didn't care about fair or unfair, guilty or innocent. Her hands moved on autopilot, pulling up a search browser and typing in Roman's name. The results made her blood run cold. News articles. Police investigations. Allegations of racketeering, money laundering, connections to organized crime families that controlled everything from the docks to the downtown clubs. Nothing ever stuck. Roman DeLuca was too careful, too powerful, too connected, but everyone knew what he was. A crime boss. One of the most dangerous men in New York, and Ethan had stolen from him. Claire's phone slipped from her numb fingers onto the couch cushion. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The studio apartment that had felt claustrophobic before now felt like a cage. No locks on her door would keep out someone like Roman DeLuca if he decided he wanted in. She needed to leave. Pack a bag, get on a bus, disappear somewhere he couldn't find her. Except she had $400 and a baby growing inside her, and nowhere to go that wouldn't leave a trail. No family, except a mother who'd remarried and moved to Arizona. No real savings. No plan. Trapped. The word settled over her like a physical weight. She was trapped in this apartment, trapped in this pregnancy, trapped in whatever war Ethan had started by stealing from people who didn't forgive debts. Her phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. "The restaurant is Luciano's on 53rd. Tomorrow at noon. Come alone." Claire stared at the message until the words stopped making sense. She could ignore it, could pretend she'd never seen it, never answered that first call. But Roman already knew where she lived, knew her name, knew about the baby. Ignoring him wouldn't make her safer. Maybe meeting him would. The thought was insane. Meeting a crime boss because he asked nicely? But what choice did she have? If there really were other people looking for Ethan, people who might hurt her to get to him, didn't she need to know what she was dealing with? Claire pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them like she could hold herself together through sheer force of will. Tomorrow. She had until tomorrow to decide if she was brave enough or stupid enough to walk into that restaurant. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she paced her tiny apartment, researching everything she could find about Roman DeLuca, about organized crime in New York, about what happened to people who got caught in the crossfire of these kinds of wars. The information wasn't comforting. Bodies in the river, witnesses who disappeared, families who learned not to ask questions. By the time dawn broke through her single window, Claire had made her decision. She would go to the meeting, not because she trusted Roman, but because not going felt more dangerous than going. At least if she showed up, she'd know what she was dealing with. At least she'd have information instead of just fear. The morning crawled by. She forced down toast she couldn't taste, showered in water that couldn't wash away the anxiety coating her skin, dressed in the only professional outfit she owned, black slacks and a white blouse from her last office job, back when she'd thought her life was heading somewhere stable. At 11:30, she left her apartment. The subway ride to Midtown felt surreal. All these people going about their normal days, heading to work or lunch or shopping, completely unaware that the woman standing next to them was on her way to meet a crime boss. Claire kept her eyes down, counting stops, trying to keep her breathing steady. Luciano's was the kind of restaurant she'd never been able to afford. White tablecloths, actual artwork on the walls, A host who looked at her second-hand outfit with barely concealed judgment before checking his reservation list. "I'm meeting someone," Claire said. "Roman DeLuca." The host's expression changed instantly. The judgment disappeared, replaced by something that might have been wariness or respect. "Of course. Right this way." He led her through the main dining room to a private section in the back, separated by frosted glass panels. Only one table occupied the space, and only one man sat at it. Roman DeLuca looked different than Claire had imagined. She'd pictured someone older, maybe, scarred and obvious in his violence. Instead, he was probably mid-30s, dark hair precisely cut, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. Handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like a knife wrapped in expensive silk. He stood when she approached, polite, as if this were a normal business meeting and not whatever nightmare she'd stumbled into. "Miss Whitmore," he said, "thank you for coming." Claire didn't sit. "I'm here. Ask your questions." Roman gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit. I ordered coffee." "I don't want coffee." "You're pregnant. You should eat something." The casual mention of her pregnancy made her skin crawl. This stranger knew intimate details about her life, had probably done research just like she had, probably knew things about her she didn't know about herself. "How did you find my address?" she asked. "Ethan kept records, sloppy ones." Roman pulled out the chair again, a clear invitation. "Sit. I promise you're in no danger from me. Not today." The qualifier hung in the air. Not today. Meaning tomorrow, next week, next month. Those were still open questions. Claire sat. A waiter appeared immediately with coffee and pastries she knew she wouldn't touch. Roman waited until they were alone again before speaking. "Tell me about Ethan," he said. "I already told you everything." "Tell me again." So she did. The whole pathetic story. Meeting him at a gallery opening Maya had dragged her to. The whirlwind courtship that felt like something from a movie. 6 months of restaurants and weekend trips and promises about a future that never quite materialized into concrete plans. Then 3 weeks ago, a goodbye kiss and nothing after. Roman listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You didn't know what he did for a living," he said finally. "Not a question. I thought he worked in consulting." "Did you meet any of his colleagues, his friends?" "No, he said he was private about his personal life." "Did you ever go to his office?" Claire's jaw tightened. "No." "Because there was no office," Roman said quietly. "Ethan worked for me as a financial consultant. He had access to accounts, transactions, information about my business operations. 3 weeks ago, he used that access to transfer $12 million out of my organization and copy files that contain enough evidence to put me in prison for the rest of my life." "I didn't know," Claire said. "I swear to you, I didn't know any of that." "I believe you." Roman leaned back in his chair, studying her. "But belief doesn't change the situation we're in. Ethan is gone. My money is gone. And the files he stole are out there somewhere, possibly in the hands of people who would love to destroy me. That's not my problem. It is now." His voice remained calm, but something in his eyes sharpened. "Because you're carrying his child, Miss Whitmore. That makes you leverage, motivation, a way to force Ethan back into the open if he cares about you at all." Fear spiked through her chest. "You said I wasn't in danger." "From me. But there are others involved in this. A Russian organization that Ethan may have sold my information to. They're less concerned with collateral damage." Claire's hands clenched in her lap. "So what do you want? You want me to call him? Text him? I told you, his phone's been dead for weeks. I want you somewhere safe," Roman said, "under my protection, where the Russians can't use you against me." The words didn't make sense for a second. Claire stared at him, waiting for the punchline. "You want to protect me?" "Yes." "Why would you do that?" Roman was quiet for a moment, his gaze shifting to something she couldn't read. "Because despite what you may believe about me, I don't harm innocent people, especially not pregnant women. And because keeping you safe keeps my enemies from gaining an advantage I can't afford to give them." "So I'd be what? A prisoner?" "A guest. In my home, with my security, free to leave once the situation is resolved. Claire laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Resolved how? Ethan's gone. Your money's gone. What resolution are you expecting? I'm expecting to find him, Roman said simply. And when I do, decisions will be made about what happens next. But until then, you need protection, whether you believe it or not. No. Claire stood, chair scraping against expensive flooring. I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm not getting more involved in this than I already am. Find Ethan yourself. She turned to leave. Miss Whitmore. Something in his tone made her stop. Not a threat. Something else. Something almost like regret. The Russians know about you, Roman said quietly. They've known since yesterday, when I made inquiries about Ethan's whereabouts. If they decide you're useful, they won't ask permission. They won't offer protection. They'll take you, and they'll use you in ways that make my offer seem generous. Claire's blood turned to ice. You're lying. I wish I was. She wanted to call his bluff, wanted to walk out of this restaurant and pretend none of this was real. But the look in his eyes wasn't manipulation. It was fact, delivered without decoration. I need time to think, she said. You have until tonight. After that, I can't guarantee your safety. That's not enough time. It's all the time there is. Claire left without another word, pushing through the frosted glass panels and past the tables of people eating lunch like the world wasn't ending. Her legs felt disconnected from her body. The subway ride home passed in a blur of panic and calculation. Under his protection. In his home. A guest who couldn't leave until the situation was resolved. It was insane, all of it. But when she unlocked her apartment door and stepped into the space that suddenly felt even smaller, even more vulnerable, she couldn't shake the feeling that Roman had been telling the truth. She was in danger. Real, immediate danger. And she had no one else to turn to. Her phone buzzed. Maya's name on the screen. Hey, Claire answered, voice shaking. I need to tell you something. Tell me at brunch Sunday, Maya said. I'm slammed at work. Rain check on coffee later? Yeah, rain check. She hung up before Maya could hear her cry. Claire stood at her apartment window watching the street below, phone clutched in her hand. 6 hours had passed since the meeting at Luciano's. 6 hours of pacing and panic and trying to convince herself there was another option. There wasn't. Every scenario she'd mapped out ended the same way. She could run, but where? She could go to the police, and tell them what? That her ex-boyfriend stole from the mob and now she was caught in the middle? They'd laugh her out of the precinct, or worse, think she was involved. She could stay here and hope Roman was exaggerating about the Russians, but the knot in her stomach told her he wasn't. Her finger hovered over the callback number Roman had left. Just one call, one decision. Then her life would belong to someone else's protection, someone else's war, someone else's rules. The alternative was waiting here alone until people who didn't care about innocent bystanders came through her door. She pressed dial. Roman answered on the first ring. Miss Whitmore. I'll come with you, Claire said. The words tasted like surrender. But I need to know exactly what I'm agreeing to. You'll stay at my estate in Westchester. Private quarters, full security. You're free to move around the property, but you don't leave without my knowledge. How long? Until we find Ethan or neutralize the threat. Could be days? Could be longer. Claire's throat tightened. And if I want to leave before then? We'll discuss it when the time comes. Not a yes, not a promise. Just another evasion in a conversation built on them. I need to pack, she said. A car will be there in 30 minutes. The line went dead before she could respond. Claire lowered the phone, staring at her reflection in the darkening window. 30 minutes. Half an hour to pack up whatever pieces of her old life she could fit in a bag before walking into something she didn't understand and couldn't control. She grabbed her duffel from the closet and started throwing in clothes without thinking about what matched or what she'd need. Jeans, sweaters, her one good dress in case what? In case Roman threw dinner parties for his protection cases? The thought was absurd enough that she almost laughed. Her hand stilled on a framed photo sitting on her dresser. Her and Maya at graduation, arms around each other, faces bright with the kind of hope that felt like a foreign language now. She left it where it was. Some things didn't belong in whatever came next. 28 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up outside her building. Claire watched from the window as two men in dark suits stepped out. Not Roman, just his people, come to collect his newest acquisition. She grabbed her bag, locked her door, and walked down 4 flights of stairs that felt like descending into deep water. The men didn't speak. One took her bag. The other opened the rear door and stood waiting with the kind of patience that suggested he'd wait all night if necessary. Claire climbed in. The interior smelled like leather, and something expensive she couldn't name. Tinted windows turned the familiar streets of her neighborhood into shadows. She pressed her hands against her thighs to keep them from shaking. They drove north. Out of Manhattan, through neighborhoods that got progressively nicer until the buildings gave way to trees and long driveways hidden behind iron gates. Old money territory. The kind of place where people didn't ask questions about their neighbors because they already knew the answers and had learned not to care. The SUV turned onto a private road that wound through woods dense enough to block out the last of the evening light. After a mile, gates appeared. 12 feet tall, ornate iron, with cameras mounted at intervals that probably covered every angle of approach. They opened smoothly as the SUV approached. The estate beyond made Claire's breath catch, despite herself. The main house sprawled across what had to be 5 acres of manicured grounds. 3 stories of stone and glass, lit from within so it glowed against the darkening sky. Gardens she could barely make out in the twilight. A fountain. Actual statues. This wasn't a house. It was a compound. The SUV pulled up to the front entrance where Roman stood waiting. He'd changed out of his suit into dark slacks and a button-down with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. Somehow, he looked more dangerous dressed down, more real. "Miss Whitmore," he said as she climbed out. "Welcome. Welcome." Like she was a dinner guest instead of a refugee. "This is where you live," Claire said. Not a question. "Among other places. Come inside." The driver retrieved her bag and disappeared around the side of the house. Roman gestured toward the entrance and Claire followed because what else could she do? The front doors opened onto a foyer that could have fit her entire apartment twice over. Marble floors, a staircase that curved up to the second floor. Art on the walls that was probably worth more than she'd make in 10 years. "Your quarters are upstairs," Roman said. "I'll show you." He led her up the staircase and down a hallway lined with doors. At the end, he opened one onto a suite that made her want to laugh at the absurdity. Bedroom, sitting area, private bathroom with a tub deep enough to drown in. Windows overlooking gardens she'd explore tomorrow if she survived tonight. "There's a panic button by the bed," Roman said, pointing to a discreet switch on the nightstand. "You press it, my security arrives in under a minute." "Why would I need that if I'm supposed to be safe here?" "You are safe. The button is a precaution." Claire dropped her bag on the bed and turned to face him. "What happens now?" "Now you rest. Dinner's at 7 if you're hungry. Otherwise, I'll have something sent up." "I meant what happens with Ethan, with finding him." Roman's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. "I have people working on it. When there's news, I'll inform you." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have tonight." He left before she could argue, closing the door quietly behind him. Claire stood in the center of the expensive room feeling like an artifact in a museum. On display, but not quite real. She didn't go down for dinner. Instead, she unpacked her meager belongings into a dresser that could have held 10 times as much, then sat on the edge of the bed trying to process what her life had become in the span of 24 hours. Pregnant, abandoned, protected by a crime boss because her ex-boyfriend had stolen millions and disappeared. If she'd read it in a book, she would have thrown it across the room for being too ridiculous. Someone knocked around 8. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an accent Claire thought might be Italian entered carrying a tray. "Mr. DeLuca thought you might be hungry," she said, setting it on the small table by the window. "I'm Maria. I manage the house. You need anything, you find me." "Thank you," Claire managed. Maria paused at the door. "He's not what people think, you know, Mr. DeLuca. People see the power, and they forget the rest." She left before Claire could ask what the rest was supposed to be. The food was better than anything Claire had eaten in months. Some kind of pasta she didn't have a name for, bread still warm from the oven, vegetables that actually tasted like vegetables instead of the wilted produce from her corner bodega. She ate without tasting it, her mind elsewhere. She slept badly that night. Dreams full of locked doors and Ethan's face twisted into expressions she'd never seen while he was awake. When she finally gave up on sleep around 6, the sun was just starting to break through the windows. Claire showered in the massive bathroom, dressed in jeans and a sweater, and ventured downstairs. The house felt different in daylight, less imposing, more lived in. She could hear voices from somewhere deeper in the building, smell coffee, see evidence that people actually worked here beyond just protecting Roman's interests. She found the kitchen following the coffee smell. Maria stood at the stove cooking something that made Claire's stomach growl despite the anxiety. "You're up early," Maria said without turning around. "Couldn't sleep." "Sit. I'll make you breakfast." Claire sat at the kitchen island and accepted the coffee Maria poured. Strong, black, perfect. She wrapped both hands around the mug and tried to pretend this was normal. "How long have you worked for Roman?" she asked. 15 years since his father passed. His father ran this place before him? Maria's expression shifted slightly. Careful. Yes. So it was a family business, the crime, the money, the compound hidden in Westchester where people came when they needed protection from wars they hadn't started. Generational. "Does he do this often?" Claire asked. "Take in people who need help?" "Sometimes, when the situation calls for it." "And what does the situation usually call for?" Maria turned from the stove, meeting Claire's eyes directly. "You're asking the wrong questions." "What should I be asking?" "You should be asking if you can trust him to keep you safe. The answer is yes." She slid a plate of eggs and toast across the counter. "Eat. You're feeding two now." The reminder made Claire's chest tighten. She'd been so focused on survival, she'd almost forgotten the reason she was in this mess. 8 weeks pregnant with a baby whose father had abandoned them both and left her at the mercy of people who measured debts in millions. She was picking at her eggs when Roman walked in. He looked like he'd been up for hours despite the early time. Sharp-eyed and clean-shaven, wearing another perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than her rent. He poured himself coffee and leaned against the counter across from her. "Sleep well?" he asked. "Not really." "That's understandable." Claire set down her fork. "I want to know what you're doing to find Ethan." "I have people tracking his financial movements, checking border crossings, private airports, properties he might run to. It takes time." "And if you find him?" Roman took a slow sip of coffee. "Then we have a conversation about what he stole and where it is now." What kind of conversation?" "The kind that ends with me getting my property back." "And him? What happens to him?" "That depends on how cooperative he is." Claire's stomach turned. The careful phrasing, the measured tone, all of it designed to hide what Roman really meant. If Ethan was cooperative, maybe he lived. If he wasn't, well, people who stole $12 million from crime bosses didn't usually die of old age. "I know what you're thinking," Roman said quietly. "You're thinking I'm going to kill him." "Are you?" "I'm thinking about it." The honesty was somehow worse than a lie would have been. At least a lie would have let her pretend this situation had guardrails, rules, lines that wouldn't be crossed. Roman was telling her straight that Ethan's life was negotiable, and she had no say in the negotiation. "He's the father of my child," Claire said. "He's also the man who put you in danger and ran. Those things can both be true." Maria cleared her throat from across the kitchen. "Mr. DeLuca, Marco needs you in the office." Roman drained his coffee and set the cup aside. "We'll continue this later." He left. Claire sat alone with her half-eaten breakfast, feeling the walls of her golden cage settle a little closer. The rest of the day crawled by. She explored the grounds within sight of the house, walked through gardens that were probably stunning in summer, sat by the fountain and tried to imagine a version of her life where this made sense. It didn't. By evening, she was restless enough to venture back downstairs looking for something, anything, to do. She found a library tucked away on the first floor. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs, a fireplace currently unlit. It felt like the kind of room where important men made important decisions. Claire was examining the shelves when the door opened behind her. Roman stood in the doorway holding a folder. "Looking for something to read?" "Looking for something to do besides sit in my room going crazy." He crossed to the desk and set down the folder. "I have news. About Ethan." Claire's heart jumped. "You found him?" "Not yet, but we found where he's been." Roman opened the folder and slid out a series of photographs. Hotel security camera stills, grainy but clear enough. Ethan walking through a lobby. Ethan getting into a car. Ethan with someone Claire didn't recognize. "Where is this?" she asked. "Miami, 3 days ago." 3 days. He'd been in the country this whole time, not even trying to hide. Or maybe he'd thought he was hidden enough that Roman wouldn't find him. "Who's he with?" Claire pointed at the second figure in one of the photos. Roman's jaw tightened. "Viktor Kozlov. He's an associate of the Bratva." "The what?" "Russian organized crime. The people I told you about." Claire's vision tunneled. Ethan wasn't just running, he was with the Russians. The same Russians who supposedly wanted to use her as leverage, who didn't care about collateral damage. "He sold you out," she said. The words felt hollow. "He sold your information to them." "That's what it looks like." "So what does that mean for me?" Roman closed the folder. "It means we accelerate the timeline. If Ethan's with the Bratva, they already know everything he does, including you." Fear spiked cold through Claire's chest. "You said I'd be safe here." "You are, but I need to draw Ethan out before the Russians decide to make a move, which means I need to use the one thing he might still care about." Understanding hit like a fist. "Me? You want to use me as bait?" "Yes." At least he wasn't pretending anymore. Claire stepped back from the desk, putting space between them. "No, absolutely not. Claire, don't. Don't use my first name like we're friends. You want to dangle me in front of a man who abandoned me and hope he's stupid enough to show up so you can what? Kill him? Torture him? Get your money back and leave me to deal with whatever comes after?" Roman moved around the desk, closing the distance she'd just created. "I want to end this before you get hurt. Before the baby gets hurt. The longer Ethan is out there with the Brava's protection, the more dangerous this becomes for everyone. Then let me go. Let me disappear somewhere they can't find me. You think the Brava can't find anyone they want to find? You think running is going to save you?" His voice rose slightly, the first crack in his controlled facade. "They have resources that make mine look like a child's allowance. If they decide you're useful, they will take you, and they won't be gentle about it." Claire's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her sides, trying to hold on to anger instead of fear. "So my choice is be bait for you or be bait for them. Your choice is trust me to control the situation or leave yourself vulnerable to people who won't care if you survive the experience. That's not a choice." "No," Roman agreed quietly. "It's not, but it's what we have." She wanted to scream at him, wanted to throw the folder across the room and demand he fix this without using her as a bargaining chip. But the look in his eyes told her he'd already run every scenario, already calculated every option, and this was the one that ended with her breathing. "What do you need me to do?" Claire asked. Roman let out a breath she hadn't realized he was holding. "We arrange a meeting. Public place, plenty of witnesses. You send Ethan a message saying you need to see him, that it's about the baby. He won't come. He might. If he thinks there's a chance, you'll tell him where you've been, what you know about my investigation, or if he actually cares about what happens to his child." The way he said it made Claire think Roman didn't believe the second option. Neither did she, honestly. The Ethan she'd loved might have cared. The Ethan who'd stolen $12 million and run to the Russians wasn't that person anymore. Maybe he never had been. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow. I'll have my people set it up." "And if he doesn't show?" "Then we try something else." Claire nodded slowly, feeling the trap close around her. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "If you get your money back and your files, if this ends the way you want it to, what happens to me?" Roman was quiet for a long moment. "You go back to your life. With protection if you want it. Without if you prefer. Just like that. Just like that." She didn't believe him, but she didn't have the energy to argue. Instead, she turned back to the bookshelves, running her fingers along the spines without really seeing the titles. "I'll do it," she said. "But I want something in return." "What?" "The truth. About what Ethan actually did for you, about what he stole and why it matters so much." Roman hesitated. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. "That information is dangerous." "I'm already in danger. I'd like to know why." He moved to the fireplace, staring at the cold ashes like they held answers. "Ethan didn't just steal money. He copied transaction records, client lists, evidence of operations that could dismantle my entire organization if they went public. I've spent 15 years building legitimacy, businesses that can't be touched, relationships with people in positions to protect me. Those files would destroy all of it. So why haven't the Russians used them already?" Because they're not interested in destroying me. They're interested in owning me. The files give them leverage to force cooperation, to muscle into my territory, to make me a puppet in their operation. If that happens, a lot of people die. Not just criminals, civilians. People caught in the crossfire when the Bratva decides to take over. Claire turned to face him. And you expect me to believe you care about civilians? I expect you to understand that I have rules. Lines I don't cross. The Bratva doesn't. They'll burn down neighborhoods to make a point. They'll kill families to send messages. I've seen what happens when they move into new territory, and I won't let them do it here. So this is about protecting your city. This is about protecting what's mine. The city is part of that. At least he was honest about his motivations. Claire could respect that, even if she couldn't respect the man. Tomorrow then, she said. Where's the meeting? There's a cafe in Manhattan, neutral ground. I'll have people in place, but they won't move unless something goes wrong. Define wrong. If Ethan tries to take you, if the Russians show up, if anyone pulls a weapon. Roman met her eyes. You won't be alone, Claire. I promise you that. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this plan wouldn't end with her dead in a cafe while Roman and Ethan and the Russians fought over money and files and territory, but trust required faith she didn't have anymore. I should get some rest, she said. If I'm going to be bait tomorrow, I should probably sleep. Roman looked like he wanted to say something else, but stopped himself. Maria will bring dinner to your room. If you need anything, there's a phone by the bed. Claire left without responding. Back upstairs, back to her borrowed suite, back to waiting for tomorrow to arrive and destroy whatever fragile sense of safety she'd built in the last 30 hours. She didn't sleep that night either. Instead, she sat by the window watching the grounds, thinking about Ethan, trying to remember what she'd loved about him and coming up empty. The memories felt contaminated now, poisoned by everything that had come after. Had any of it been real? Or had she been a convenient cover the whole time, a normal girlfriend for a man whose life was built on theft and betrayal? Around 3 a.m, she saw movement below. Roman walking the grounds with 2 men who carried themselves like soldiers. He stopped by the fountain, looking back at the house, and for a second Claire thought he might look up at her window. He didn't. Morning came too fast. Maria brought breakfast and clothes Claire hadn't packed, simple and nice in a way her own wardrobe hadn't been in years. Dark jeans, a soft gray sweater, boots that actually fit. Mr. DeLuca thought you might want something new, Maria said, laying them out on the bed. He's very thoughtful for someone planning to use me as bait. Maria's expression tightened. He's trying to keep you alive. But is that what you tell yourself when he does things that aren't legal or moral or right? I tell myself that he's better than the alternatives. I tell myself that the world isn't simple, and neither are the people in it. Maria moved toward the door. You should eat. Long day ahead. Claire picked at her breakfast until Roman knocked at 9. He was back in a suit, this one charcoal with a dark shirt underneath. No tie. Still looking like violence wrapped in expensive fabric. Ready? He asked. No, but I'll go anyway. The drive back into Manhattan felt like traveling in reverse. Trees giving way to buildings. Space compressing into the familiar crush of the city. They stopped 3 blocks from the cafe, and Roman turned to face her. There will be 4 of my people inside, he said. 2 more outside. You won't see most of them, but they're there. You go in, order coffee, wait. When Ethan arrives, you talk. Keep it natural. Don't mention me or where you've been. Just tell him about the baby. And then? Then you leave. My people will make sure he doesn't follow. What if he wants to come with me? Roman's expression went cold. He won't. Claire climbed out before she could lose her nerve. The cafe was one of those trendy places with exposed brick and overpriced pastries, crowded enough that she wouldn't stand out. She ordered a decaf latte and found a table near the window where she could watch the street. Ethan showed up 20 minutes later. Claire's breath caught when she saw him through the glass. Same face, same walk, same everything that had made her fall for him 6 months ago. But different too, harder around the edges. Eyes that moved constantly, scanning for threats. He came inside and spotted her immediately. For a second, something flickered across his face that might have been guilt or relief or just surprise that she'd actually come. Claire, he said, sliding into the chair across from her. I wasn't sure you'd show. Her hands tightened around her cup. I wasn't sure you'd still be alive. Yeah, well, I'm harder to kill than I look. He tried a smile. It didn't land. You look good. I'm pregnant, Ethan. 8 weeks. With your baby. The smile disappeared. He sat back like she'd hit him. What? You heard me. How? The usual way. Turns out when you leave without a trace, you don't get to have opinions about the consequences. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, that nervous gesture she'd seen 1,000 times. This is why you wanted to meet? To tell me you're pregnant? To tell you that you abandoned both of us? To ask what the hell you were thinking when you stole from Roman DeLuca and ran? His whole body went rigid. How do you know about that? Because he found me, Ethan. Your old phone number got recycled, and I accidentally sent him an ultrasound photo, and now I'm in the middle of whatever war you started. He threatened you? He protected me. From the Russians you're apparently working with now. Ethan's jaw clenched. It's not like that. Then what's it like? Explain it to me. He leaned forward, voice dropping. Roman's organization is falling apart. The Bratva offered me a way out, protection, a new life. I took it. You sold him out. I survived. That's what you do in this world. Claire stared at the man across from her and felt nothing but disgust. And me? And the baby? Were we just collateral damage in your survival plan? I was going to come back for you. Once things settled... Liar. The word hung between them. Ethan's expression shifted into something uglier. Less pretense, more truth. You don't understand what you're dealing with, he said. Roman isn't some protector. He's a criminal who'll use you and throw you away the second you stop being useful. At least he was honest about it. You just disappeared. I disappeared because staying meant dying. The Bratva made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and I took it. I'm sorry you got caught up in this, but that's not my fault. Claire felt something crack inside her chest. Whatever tiny hope she'd been carrying that Ethan might still be the man she'd loved, it shattered right there across a cafe table with overpriced coffee cooling between them. You're right, she said quietly. I don't understand what I'm dealing with, but I'm learning fast. She stood to leave. Ethan's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. Wait, where are you going? Away from you. His grip tightened, not enough to hurt, but enough to keep her in place. Around the cafe, Claire felt rather than saw people noticing, including, she hoped, Roman's security. Let go, she said. Not until you tell me where you've been. Did Roman put you somewhere? Is he watching right now? So that was it. He hadn't come to see her or talk about the baby. He'd come fishing for information about Roman's movements, trying to figure out if this was a trap. It was. But knowing that didn't make the betrayal hurt less. Let go of me, Ethan. His eyes narrowed. Then he did something that stopped Claire's heart. He pulled her closer, his other hand sliding into his jacket. You're going to come with me, he said quietly. Nice and easy. Out the back. Don't make a scene. You can't be serious. The Bratva wants leverage on Roman. You're it. I'm sorry, Claire. Really. But this is bigger than us now. Metal pressed against her side. A gun, concealed under his jacket, aimed at her stomach, at the baby growing inside her. Claire's vision blurred. Ethan, move. She moved, out of the chair, away from the table, toward the back of the cafe where an exit sign glowed green. Every step felt like walking underwater. Slow, wrong, impossible. This was it, the moment Roman had planned for, the moment his security was supposed to move. Except they weren't moving. Claire's mind raced. The code word. Roman had given her a code word to use if something went wrong, and she'd been so focused on surviving the meeting she'd forgotten it entirely. What was it? Something simple, something she could say naturally. They were almost to the back door when she remembered. Monarch, Claire said clearly, loud enough to carry. I need to get my Monarch inhaler from my purse. Ethan froze. What? My inhaler. I have asthma. The brand is Monarch. I left it at the table. You don't have asthma. I do now. Everything happened at once. The door behind them burst open. Men poured in from the front. Ethan spun, dragging Claire with him, the gun now visible and aimed at anyone who came closer. People screamed, tables overturned. Claire drove her elbow back into Ethan's stomach as hard as she could. He grunted, grip loosening just enough. She twisted away, hit the floor, felt hands grab her and pull her behind cover, Roman's voice in her ear. "I've got you. Stay down." Gunfire. Sharp cracks that made her ears ring. Then silence broken only by someone crying near the front of the cafe. Claire looked up. Ethan was on the ground, 3 of Roman's men surrounding him, no gun visible, hands zip-tied behind his back. Alive, but finished. Roman helped her to her feet, hands surprisingly gentle for someone who'd just orchestrated a violent capture in a public cafe. "You okay?" he asked. Claire couldn't speak, could only nod. "Get her out of here," Roman told someone. Then to Ethan, "We'll talk later. You and I have a lot to discuss." The last thing Claire saw before they led her out the back exit was Ethan's face. No remorse there, no apology, just cold calculation, already working on his next play, his next betrayal. The man she'd loved was gone. Maybe he'd never existed at all. The SUV tore through Manhattan traffic like the laws of physics didn't apply. Claire sat in the back seat, Roman beside her, her hands still shaking from adrenaline and shock. The sounds from the cafe kept replaying in her head. Gunfire. Screaming. Ethan's voice saying he was sorry before pressing a weapon against her pregnant stomach. "Breathe," Roman said quietly. "You're safe now." Safe. The word felt like a joke. She pressed her palms against her thighs, trying to stop the tremors. "He was going to take me, give me to the Russians." "I know." "He had a gun on me. On the baby." "I know." Roman's jaw was tight, his voice controlled but barely. "He made a mistake coming after you." Claire turned to look at him. "What are you going to do to him?" "What needs to be done?" "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting right now." The SUV hit the highway heading north. Back to Westchester, back to the estate, back to the cage that suddenly felt less like imprisonment and more like the only place left where the world made any kind of sense. Claire closed her eyes and tried not to think about the look on Ethan's face when he'd grabbed her. Cold, calculating, like she was a chess piece instead of a person, like their 6 months together had meant nothing beyond convenience and cover. "Did you know," she asked, "that he'd try to take me?" Roman was quiet for a moment. "I suspected. The Bratva's been looking for leverage and you're the obvious choice. I hoped Ethan had enough humanity left to refuse. I was wrong. You used me anyway. I gave you the code word. I had 8 people in that cafe. You were never in real danger." "He had a gun on me, Roman. That's the definition of real danger. And now he's in custody and you're not. That's what matters." Claire wanted to argue, but exhaustion hit her like a wave. The fear, the confrontation, the terrible clarity of realizing Ethan would have handed her over without hesitation. All of it crashed down at once and left her hollow. They drove the rest of the way in silence. The estate appeared through the trees like something from another world. Safe. Protected. A fortress where people like Ethan couldn't reach her. Roman helped her out of the SUV even though she didn't need help, his hand steady on her elbow as they walked inside. Maria met them in the foyer, took one look at Claire's face, and disappeared to make tea or soup or whatever she thought might fix this. It wouldn't. Nothing would. "You should rest," Roman said. "I'm not tired." "You're exhausted. Go upstairs. I'll handle things from here." Claire turned on him, anger finally cutting through the shock. "Handle things? You mean interrogate Ethan? Torture him for information? Kill him?" "I mean do what's necessary to end this situation before the Bratva makes another move. He's still the father of my baby. He stopped being anything to you the moment he put a gun on you." The words hit harder because they were true. Claire felt tears burn behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of Roman while he stood there being right about things she didn't want to face. "I need air," she said. "Claire, just give me some space, please." She walked away before he could argue, out through the back of the house into the gardens she'd barely explored. The November cold bit through her sweater, but she didn't care. She needed to feel something other than fear and betrayal and the crushing weight of bad decisions. The garden sprawled in careful chaos. Paths winding between hedges that probably bloomed in spring, benches placed at intervals for contemplation or secrets. Claire found one near a reflecting pool and sat, staring at her distorted image in the dark water. 8 weeks pregnant. Single. Under the protection of a crime boss because the man she'd loved had tried to sell her to the Russian mob. If someone had told her 3 months ago this would be her life, she would have laughed them out of the room. Footsteps on gravel made her tense. She turned expecting Roman, but found someone else. A man in his 60s, white hair, expensive coat, walking with the kind of confidence that suggested he belonged here. "You must be Claire," he said. His accent was slight but present. Eastern European, maybe. "I'm Viktor Kozlov." Ice flooded her veins. The Russian. The one from the photos with Ethan. He was here, in Roman's garden, walking toward her like they were old friends meeting for tea. Claire stood, backing away. "How did you get in here?" "Roman and I have an understanding. Sometimes we talk before we fight." Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't worry, I'm not here to hurt you, just to talk. I have nothing to say to you. But I have things to say to you, about Ethan, about the position you're in, about choices you might want to consider. Roman security knows I'm here. He granted me safe passage for this conversation, 10 minutes. Then I leave and we go back to being enemies." Victor gestured to the bench. "Please, sit." Claire didn't sit, didn't move, just stared at this man who'd been working with Ethan, who represented everything Roman had warned her about. Victor sighed. "Fine, we'll stand. I'll keep this simple. Ethan stole files from Roman that we now possess. Those files are worth more than the money he took. They give us leverage to expand our operations into territory Roman currently controls." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're leveraged too. Different kind, but leverage nonetheless. Roman cares about very few people. He's kept you safe, protected you, used resources to ensure nothing happens to you or your child. That tells me you matter to him. I'm just a problem he needs to solve. Perhaps. Or perhaps you're something more. Either way, the Bratva is willing to make you an offer." Claire's hands clenched. "I'm not interested in anything you're offering." "You haven't heard it yet. We'll return the files to Roman. All of them. In exchange, you convince him to let Ethan go. No retaliation, no punishment, just release him to our custody and we all walk away." "That's insane. Why would I do that?" "Because Ethan is the father of your child. Because despite everything, you might want your baby to grow up knowing its father. Because if Roman kills him, you'll carry that weight forever." Victor stepped closer. "And because if you don't, the Bratva will be forced to take more aggressive action. Action that might put you directly in harm's way despite Roman's protection." "You're threatening me. I'm giving you context. There's a difference." "Get out." Victor pulled a card from his pocket and set it on the bench. "My number, in case you change your mind. You have 24 hours before this offer expires." He walked away, disappearing back through the gardens toward wherever he'd come from. Claire stood frozen, staring at the card like it might explode. Her mind raced. The Bratva wanted Ethan back. They'd trade the files for him, and they expected her to convince Roman to make that deal. She left the card where it was and ran back to the house. Roman was in his office, a room she hadn't seen before. Dark wood, leather furniture, walls lined with books that looked red instead of decorative. He stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, but hung up when she burst in. "Viktor Kozlov was just in your garden," Claire said. "He threatened me." Roman's expression went cold. "What did he say?" She repeated the conversation word for word, watching his face darken with each sentence. When she finished, he picked up his phone and made a call. "Kozlov's safe passage is revoked," he said to whoever answered. "If he's still on the property in 5 minutes, kill him." He hung up. Claire's breath caught. "You can't just—" "I can and I will. He broke our agreement. He approached you without permission. That's a death sentence. He said you knew he was here. I knew he wanted to talk. I didn't authorize him going near you." Roman crossed to her, hand settling on her shoulders. "Are you hurt? Did he touch you?" "No, he just talked, made his offer, and left." "What offer?" She explained. "The files for Ethan, a clean trade with no retaliation, 24 hours to decide." Roman's hands tightened slightly on her shoulders. And what did you tell him? Nothing. I told him to leave. Claire met his eyes. But I need to know what you're planning to do with Ethan, because if you're going to kill him, I deserve to know that now. I haven't decided yet. That's not good enough. It's all I have. Roman let go and moved back to the window. Ethan betrayed me, stole from me, tried to kidnap you. Any one of those things justifies his death. All three together make it mandatory by every rule I operate under. But you're right. He's the father of your child. That complicates things. Claire moved closer. Victor said the Bratva would take aggressive action if I don't convince you to make the trade. What does that mean? It means they'll come after you harder. Maybe attack the estate. Maybe find another way to force my hand. The Bratva doesn't make empty threats. So we're back to me being bait. You're not bait. You're the person I'm trying to keep alive while managing a situation that gets worse every hour. Then make the trade. Roman turned sharply. What? Give them Ethan. Get your files back. End this before someone dies. Someone's going to die regardless. Probably Ethan, possibly Kozlov, maybe both. But not me, not the baby. That's what matters, right? Roman studied her for a long moment. You want me to let him go? After everything he did? I want this to be over. I want to go back to my life. Or whatever's left of it. I want my child to be safe. If that means Ethan walks away, then fine. He was dead to me the moment he pulled that gun anyway. The words tasted bitter, but true. Whatever she'd felt for Ethan had died in that cafe. What remained was just the biological reality that he'd contributed half the DNA to the person growing inside her. Nothing more. I'll think about it, Roman said finally. That's all I'm asking. She left him there, staring out the window at grounds that were probably being swept for any remaining trace of Viktor Kozlov. Back upstairs to her borrowed room, where she sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. For the relationship that had never been real. For the future she'd imagined that was never going to happen. For the baby who would grow up knowing its father had chosen crime and Russians over being a decent human being. Maria found her an hour later, red-eyed and exhausted. Mr. DeLuca wants you to know Kozlov is gone, she said gently. Left the property without incident. Also, that dinner is in an hour if you're hungry. I'm not. You should eat anyway, for the baby. Claire nodded numbly. Maria sat beside her on the bed, not touching but present in a way that felt maternal and comforting. He's trying to do right by you, Maria said. Mr. DeLuca, in his own way. His way involves violence and threats and using me as leverage. His way involves keeping you breathing when other people would have let you die. That's worth something. Maybe. Claire wasn't sure anymore what anything was worth in this world where crime bosses were protectors and the man she'd loved was a traitor. She went down to dinner because Maria was right about needing to eat. Found Roman already seated at a table that could accommodate 12 but currently held just 2 place settings. He stood when she entered, that same careful politeness he always showed her. How are you feeling? He asked. Like I've been in a car accident, except the car was my entire life. Appropriate metaphor. They ate in silence for a while. Some kind of chicken dish Claire barely tasted. Wine for Roman, water for her. The clink of silverware the only sound. Finally Roman spoke. I've made a decision about Ethan. Claire set down her fork. And? I'm going to make the trade. The files for his release to Bratva custody. With conditions. What conditions? Kozlov guarantees your safety, formally, on record. Any move the Bratva makes against you breaks the agreement and triggers immediate retaliation. Will he agree to that? He will, if he wants his asset back. Claire processed that. Ethan was an asset now, not a person, not even a prisoner, just a bargaining chip in a war between organizations that measured human lives in terms of strategic value. When? She asked. Tomorrow night, neutral location. I hand over Ethan, they hand over the files, everyone walks away. And then? And then you're free to go, back to your apartment, your job, your life. With security if you want it. I'll have someone watching in case the Bratva gets ideas. Freedom. The word felt foreign. Claire had been in Roman's custody less than a week, but it felt like months, years. A lifetime compressed into days of fear and revelation and slowly understanding that the world was darker than she'd ever let herself believe. I don't know if I can go back, she said quietly. To my apartment, my job. Everything feels contaminated now. Then go somewhere new. I can help with that. New city, new start, enough money to get established. Why would you do that? Roman was quiet for a moment. Because you didn't deserve this, any of this. You were collateral damage in a war you didn't start, and I'm the one who pulled you deeper into it. Helping you start over is the least I can do. Claire looked at him across the table. Really looked. Past the expensive suit and the controlled expression and the reputation that preceded him everywhere he went. Underneath all that was something she hadn't expected. Guilt, maybe. Or just the rare instance of someone powerful enough to do whatever he wanted, choosing to do something decent instead. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. The trade still has to go smoothly. A lot can go wrong between now and tomorrow night. What happens to Ethan after, with the Russians? That's not my concern anymore. He made his choice when he went to them. Whatever they do with him is between them. Claire nodded. She should feel something about that. Relief or satisfaction or grief. Instead, she just felt empty. Ethan had become a stranger wearing a familiar face, and whatever happened to him in the Bratva's custody was just another consequence of decisions he'd made without thinking about anyone but himself. They finished dinner. Roman walked her to the stairs, that same careful distance he always maintained. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. More difficult than today? Different difficult. Claire climbed the stairs to her room and collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. Sleep came eventually, fitful and full of dreams where she was running through the cafe while Ethan chased her with that gun, his face shifting between the man she'd loved and the stranger who'd betrayed her. She woke at dawn to find a text on her phone from an unknown number. Smart choice. See you tonight. V.K. Kozlov, confirming the trade. Claire deleted the message and got up to face whatever came next. The day crawled by. Maria brought breakfast. Roman was nowhere to be seen, presumably arranging the details of the exchange. Claire paced her room, walked the gardens, tried to read, and couldn't focus on the words. By evening, she was wound so tight she thought she might shatter. Roman knocked at 7. It's time. She followed him down to where the SUV waited. Different vehicle this time, armored from the looks of it. 2 additional cars joined them as they pulled away from the estate. Security, insurance, whatever you called armed men whose job was keeping their boss alive during dangerous transactions. They drove to Brooklyn, an industrial area near the docks, all concrete and shipping containers and darkness broken by scattered streetlights. The kind of place where bad things happened and nobody asked questions. Roman's convoy stopped first. A moment later, headlights appeared from the opposite direction. 3 vehicles, same configuration. The Bratva arriving for their trade. Stay in the car, Roman told Claire. No matter what happens, stay here. What if something goes wrong? Then the driver gets you out. That's his only job. Roman climbed out. So did his security, forming a perimeter around him as he walked toward the neutral ground between the 2 convoys. From the Bratva side, Viktor Kozlov emerged with his own protection. Claire watched through the tinted window, heart hammering. This was it. The moment everything either resolved or exploded into violence that would probably kill them all. Roman and Viktor met in the middle. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but could see the tension in every line of their bodies. 2 predators circling, trying to decide if they were going to cooperate or tear each other apart. Viktor gestured. One of his men approached carrying a metal case. He opened it, showing contents Claire couldn't see from this distance. The files, presumably. Evidence of Roman's crimes packaged neatly for return. Roman examined them, nodded, gestured to his own people. They brought Ethan out. Claire's breath caught. He looked smaller than she remembered, diminished. His hands were bound, his face bruised, his eyes scanning the area like he was looking for escape routes that didn't exist. The exchange happened quickly. Files for prisoner. Roman's people retreating with the case while the Bratva collected Ethan. No ceremony, no speeches. Just business concluded between professionals. Then Viktor looked toward the SUV where Claire sat. He smiled, raised a hand in a small wave. Claire's blood went cold. Roman saw it too. His posture changed, hand moving inside his jacket. Viktor's smile widened. Tell her the truth, DeLuca, Victor called out. Loud enough to carry. Tell her why you really kept her safe. Get back in your car, Kozlov. Tell her about the baby, about why it matters. Roman security raised their weapons. The Bratva did the same. 15 armed men with fingers on triggers, waiting for someone to make the first wrong move. What's he talking about? Claire called out, unable to stop herself. Roman didn't turn around. Nothing. He's trying to cause problems. The baby isn't Ethan's, Victor said. Is it, Roman? Want to tell her whose it really is? Or should I? The world tilted. Claire grabbed the door handle, steadying herself. What? Shut your mouth, Roman said, voice deadly quiet. Ethan was sterile. Medical condition from childhood. Couldn't have kids. We had him tested when he came to work for us. Standard procedure. So that baby Claire's carrying? Victor's smile turned vicious. It's not his. Which means Roman here has been keeping her close for a reason that has nothing to do with protecting Ethan's ex-girlfriend. Claire couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Sterile. Ethan was sterile. Which meant the baby wasn't his. Which meant she'd been wrong about everything from the beginning. Who? She demanded. If it's not Ethan's, whose is it? Roman finally turned to look at her. Even from 30 feet away, she could see something in his expression crack. Get her out of here, he told the driver. No, answer me. Whose baby am I carrying? Mine, Roman said quietly. It's mine. The SUV's engine roared to life. The driver threw it in reverse, tires screaming. Claire slammed against the seat as they accelerated away from the dock, away from Roman and Victor and Ethan and the impossible truth that had just detonated her entire understanding of reality. Behind them, gunfire erupted, but Claire barely heard it over the sound of her own heartbeat and the single word echoing in her skull. Mine. Roman's baby. She was carrying Roman DeLuca's child, and she'd never even met him before 4 days ago. The SUV didn't stop until they were miles from the docks, deep in a neighborhood Claire didn't recognize. The driver pulled over next to a shuttered warehouse and killed the engine. Silence filled the interior like water flooding a sinking ship. Claire sat perfectly still, hands pressed against her stomach. Roman's baby. The words wouldn't compute, wouldn't fit into any reality she understood. Ma'am, the driver said quietly, I need to get you back to the estate. Don't. Her voice came out strange, distant. Don't take me back there. Mr. DeLuca's orders. I don't care about his orders. She looked up, met the driver's eyes in the rear-view mirror. Take me to my apartment, now. I can't do that. Then let me out here and I'll walk. The driver's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, made a call, listened to whatever Roman said on the other end, then hung up. He says, take you wherever you want to go. Of course he did, because Roman knew she'd just found out he'd been lying to her from the moment they met. Knew she'd run. Knew forcing her to stay would only make it worse. Claire gave him her address. They drove through Brooklyn in silence. The gunfire at the docks kept replaying in her head, but she pushed it away. Whatever happened between Roman and Victor didn't matter right now. What mattered was understanding how her entire life had become a lie she hadn't even known she was living. The driver pulled up outside her building. 4 flights of stairs she'd climbed 1,000 times. A door with 3 locks that suddenly felt like the only safe place left in the world. Mr. DeLuca wants you to know security will be nearby, the driver said, in case you need anything. Claire climbed out without responding. Up the stairs, hands shaking so badly she could barely get the key in the lock. Inside the studio that smelled stale from a week of absence. She closed the door, engaged all 3 locks, and slid down to sit on the floor with her back pressed against it. Roman's baby. The impossible truth sat in her chest like a stone. She hadn't slept with Roman, had never touched him beyond that moment when he'd helped her up after Ethan tried to take her, had never even been alone with him except in supervised settings with his security nearby. So how? Her phone rang. Roman's number on the screen. Claire stared at it until it stopped. 5 seconds later, it rang again. She let it go to voicemail. Again and again. On the 4th call, she answered. What did Victor mean? She demanded. How is this baby yours when I've never even kissed you? I need to explain in person. No, explain now or I hang up and block this number. Roman was quiet for a long moment. Do you remember the gallery opening, where you met Ethan? Claire's blood went cold. Yes. You didn't meet him by accident. I sent him there to approach you. Oh, why would you do that? Because 3 months before that night, you and I met at a hospital fundraiser. You were serving drinks. We talked for maybe 10 minutes. You had no idea who I was, and I didn't tell you. His voice was careful, controlled. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since. The memory surfaced slowly. A fundraiser at some Manhattan hotel where she'd picked up a catering shift to make rent. Hundreds of people in expensive clothes, most of them treating her like furniture. But there'd been one man who'd actually looked at her, asked her name, talked to her like a person. She'd thought about him for weeks after, then convinced herself she'd imagined the connection because men like that didn't notice women like her. That was you, she whispered. That was me. And when I found out where you worked, I sent Ethan to get close to you, to date you, to become part of your life. Why? Because I wanted to know everything about you and I couldn't approach you directly, not with my reputation. You would have run. Claire's hands clenched around the phone. So you sent your employee to seduce me? To pretend to care about me? To spend time with you, learn about you, report back to me about what you liked, what you wanted, who you really were beneath the surface. Roman's voice roughened. It was supposed to be surveillance, information gathering, nothing more. But Ethan was supposed to be sterile. Childhood illness, just like Victor said. Medical records confirmed it. I thought putting him close to you was safe. I thought... He stopped, started again. I was wrong. Understanding hit like a fist to the gut. The baby isn't Ethan's because Ethan couldn't have children, but I got pregnant anyway. Which means someone else was with you. Yes. You. The word tasted like poison. You were with me, and I don't even remember it. You were drugged at a bar Ethan took you to 3 months ago. Something slipped into your drink. You don't remember anything from that night. Claire did remember, or rather, remembered not remembering. Waking up in her apartment with the worst hangover of her life and gaps in her memory the size of hours. Ethan telling her she'd gotten drunk, that he'd taken her home and put her to bed. She'd believed him because why wouldn't she? You raped me, she said flatly. No, I found you. Someone else drugged you. Someone working for a rival organization trying to get to me through Ethan. I got you out before anything could happen. Took you somewhere safe until the drugs wore off. And then what? Decided to help yourself while I was unconscious? No. Roman's voice turned harsh. I stayed with you. Made sure you were safe. When you woke up the next morning, you were in your own bed with no memory of what happened. I thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. 3 weeks later, Ethan mentioned you'd been sick, nauseous, tired. I had him steal one of your used glasses and ran DNA on it. Silence. The baby is mine, Claire. Conceived that night when you were unconscious and I was watching over you. I don't know how it happened. Maybe the medication you were taking for the drugging interacted with your birth control. Maybe just terrible timing, but it happened. Claire pressed her free hand over her mouth, trying not to be sick. You've known this whole time, since before we even met at Luciano's. Yes. And you didn't tell me. I was trying to figure out how to tell you without making you run, without making you think I'd taken advantage of you when you were vulnerable. Did you? Did I what? Take advantage of me. Touch me while I was drugged and unconscious. No. The word came fast and hard. I swear to you, Claire, nothing happened between us that night except me keeping you safe until morning. I don't know how you got pregnant. Maybe... He stopped. Maybe what? Maybe it wasn't that night. Maybe it was later. Maybe there was a moment we both forgot or didn't realize. I don't have answers. I just know the DNA doesn't lie. Claire stood on shaking legs and moved to the window, stared down at the street where an SUV idled at the curb. Roman's security, watching her building like she was valuable property that needed protecting. Why keep this secret? She asked. Why not just tell me the truth from the beginning? Because I thought Ethan was the father. Everyone thought Ethan was the father, including him. When he ran and you got pulled into the situation, I made the choice to protect you without revealing why it mattered so much. I didn't want you to know you were carrying my child until I could explain it properly. When were you planning to explain it properly? After Ethan was dead, after the Bratva was handled? Or were you just going to let me raise your baby thinking it belonged to a criminal who tried to sell me to the Russians? Roman didn't answer. Claire laughed, a bitter sound that hurt coming out. You weren't going to tell me at all. You were going to let me walk away thinking this baby was Ethan's. Let me raise your child alone while you went back to your empire. I was trying to protect you from this life. From me. From everything that comes with being connected to who I am. That wasn't your choice to make. I know. Do you? Claire spun from the window. Do you have any idea what you've done? You sent someone to manipulate me, to pretend to love me, to get close to me for surveillance. You let me believe I was in a real relationship when it was all fake. You got me pregnant somehow, and then kept it secret while using me as bait to catch the man I thought fathered my child. And now you want me to believe you did all of this to protect me? I did it because I'm selfish, Roman said quietly. Because from the moment I met you at that fundraiser, I wanted you in my life, and I didn't care what it took to make that happen. I told myself it was surveillance, strategy, but it was just me being unwilling to let you go. The confession hung between them like smoke. Claire closed her eyes. I can't do this right now. What do you need? Space. Time. To not hear your voice while I process the fact that my entire life for the past 6 months has been a lie. Claire. She hung up. Blocked the number. Threw her phone across the room where it bounced off the couch and clattered to the floor. Then she sat down and cried for the second time in a week. Not for Ethan this time. For herself. For the person she'd been before all of this started. The woman who'd believed in love and trust, and the possibility that someone might want her for who she was instead of what she represented. That woman was gone. Replaced by someone who knew too much about the darkness people carried and the lies they told to justify it. Someone knocked on her door an hour later. Claire ignored it. The knocking continued, patient and persistent. Go away, she called out. It's Maria. Claire's head came up. She crossed to the door, opened it a crack. Maria stood in the hallway holding a bag of groceries and wearing an expression that suggested she wasn't leaving until Claire let her in. How did you even know where I live? Claire asked. Mr. DeLuca sent me. He thought you might need someone to talk to who isn't him. I don't want to talk to anyone. Then I'll sit quietly while you don't talk. But I'm not leaving you alone right now. Claire stepped aside. Maria entered, took one look around the studio apartment, and started unpacking groceries into the mostly empty refrigerator without comment. He told you, Claire said. Not a question. He told me enough, that the baby is his, that you just found out, that he's handled this situation poorly from the beginning. Maria put milk in the fridge, bread on the counter. He's not good at personal things. Business, strategy, keeping people alive in impossible situations, those he can do. But relationships? Being honest about what he wants? He's terrible at it. That's not an excuse. No, it's not. It's just context. Maria finished with the groceries and turned to face her. What he did was wrong. Sending Ethan to get close to you, keeping secrets, making choices about your life without your input. All of it was wrong. But he's also kept you alive through something that would have killed most people. He's protected you from the Bratva, from Ethan, from consequences you didn't earn, and he's genuinely trying to do right by you even though he doesn't know how. Claire sat heavily on the couch. Why are you defending him? I'm not defending what he did. I'm explaining who he is. Maria joined her, sitting close enough to offer comfort without demanding it. Roman's father was a brutal man, taught his son that showing weakness gets you killed, that caring about people makes you vulnerable, that the only way to survive is to control everything and trust no one. Roman spent his whole life trying to be better than his father while still operating in the same world. Sometimes he succeeds. Sometimes he fails spectacularly. And me? What am I in all of this? You're the first person in 15 years he's let himself care about. The first time he's made decisions based on emotion instead of strategy. That terrifies him. So he lies to me instead of just being honest? He's a crime boss, Claire. Honesty isn't exactly his strong suit. Maria's expression softened. But he's trying. In his broken, misguided way, he's trying to give you a life that doesn't include the darkness he lives in every day. Claire pressed both hands against her stomach. I'm carrying his baby. Yes. A baby conceived in circumstances neither of us fully understands. A baby I thought belonged to a man who turned out to be a lie. Yes. What am I supposed to do with that? Maria was quiet for a moment. You're supposed to decide what you want your life to look like going forward, with Roman's involvement or without it, raising this child in his world or keeping them far away from it. Nobody can make that choice except you. He said he'd help me start over. New city, new life, money to get established. He meant it. If you want to disappear, he'll make it happen. New identity, protection from a distance, everything you need to raise this baby safely away from all of this. And if I don't want to disappear? Maria met her eyes. Then you'll have to figure out what a relationship with Roman DeLuca looks like when it's built on truth instead of lies, if that's even possible. They sat together in silence while Claire processed everything. The baby growing inside her belonged to a crime boss she'd met a week ago. The man she'd thought she loved had never existed except as a surveillance tool. Her entire life had been manipulated by someone who claimed to care about her but didn't know how to show it without causing damage. I need to see him, Claire said finally. Face to face. I need answers that aren't filtered through phone calls and third parties. Maria nodded. I'll drive you. Now. Unless you want to wait until you've overthought it into paralysis. Claire grabbed her jacket. Maria drove them back to Westchester in a sedan that was nice but not ostentatious. They didn't talk during the trip. What was there to say that hadn't already been said? The estate appeared through the trees, lit up against the night like always. Maria pulled up to the front entrance where Roman stood waiting. He looked different, tired. The controlled facade cracked enough that Claire could see the strain underneath. Thank you for coming, he said. I didn't come for you, I came for answers. Fair enough. He glanced at Maria. Give us the room? Maria squeezed Claire's hand once and disappeared inside. Roman gestured toward the gardens. Walk with me? They walked in silence for several minutes, following paths Claire had explored during her captivity. Protected captivity, she corrected mentally, though the difference felt semantic now. Victor's dead, Roman said finally. The firefight at the docks, he didn't make it. Claire processed that. And Ethan? The Bratva took him. I assume he's either dead or wishing he was by now. Do you care? Not particularly. He made his choices. Roman stopped by the fountain, the same one where Victor had approached Claire days ago. I got the files back, all of them. The immediate threat is over. So I'm free to go. You were always free to go. I just wanted you safe first. Claire turned to face him fully. Tell me the truth about that night. The one where I got pregnant. All of it. Roman's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. You went to a bar in Chelsea with Ethan. Rival organization had people there watching. They slipped something in your drink while Ethan was in the bathroom. He called me panicking, said you were acting strange, that something was wrong. I had my people extract you both before anything worse could happen. Where did you take me? Safe house in Midtown. Medical staff on hand to make sure the drugs weren't going to cause permanent damage. I stayed with you until morning to make sure you were okay. And nothing happened between us? Nothing. You were unconscious most of the night. When you woke up around dawn, you were confused, didn't remember anything from the bar. I had Ethan take you home and tell you you'd gotten drunk. Safer than explaining the truth. But I still got pregnant. Roman ran a hand through his hair, that controlled exterior cracking further. I don't know how. The DNA is conclusive, but I can't explain the mechanism. Maybe the medical staff made a mistake. Maybe something happened I don't remember. Maybe you're lying, Claire interrupted. Maybe you did something to me that night and this whole story is just another manipulation. I'm not lying. How would I know? You've lied about everything else. Because if I was going to lie, I'd have made up something more plausible. Something that didn't make me look incompetent and clueless about how my own child was conceived. He stepped closer. I'm telling you, I don't have all the answers. I'm telling you the truth is messy and incomplete, and I hate that I can't give you the closure of understanding. But I didn't touch you, Claire. Not that night. Not ever without your knowledge. She searched his face, looking for the tells that would indicate deception. Found nothing but frustration and what might have been genuine confusion. Run the paternity test again, she said. Independent lab. I want confirmation. Done. I'll arrange it tomorrow. And if it confirms what you're saying, that this baby is yours, then we figure out what comes next, together, with your consent and input instead of me making unilateral decisions. Claire crossed her arms. Why did you really send Ethan to get close to me, the truth this time? Roman was quiet for a long moment. Because after I met you at that fundraiser, I looked into your life, found out you were struggling financially, working multiple jobs, barely making rent, and I wanted to help, but I couldn't approach you directly without scaring you off. So I sent Ethan to spy on me, to be close to you, to give me a window into your life so I could figure out how to fix things without you knowing. Fix things how? Better job opportunities that came to you naturally. Rent increases that somehow didn't happen on your building. Small interventions that would improve your life without revealing my involvement. He met her eyes. I know how that sounds. I know it's controlling and wrong and exactly the kind of thing you should run from. But I didn't know any other way to take care of you. I didn't need you to take care of me. I know, but I wanted to anyway. The honesty of it was almost worse than the lies had been. At least lies she could be angry about. This vulnerable admission of wanting to protect someone who hadn't asked for protection, it complicated everything. Why me? Claire asked. You could have anyone. Why fixate on a struggling waitress you talked to for 10 minutes? Because in those 10 minutes you saw me as a person instead of a reputation. You didn't know who I was, didn't care about my money or my power. You just talked to me like I was human. Roman's voice went rough. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? So I was what? A novelty? A normal person you could play house with? You were the first real thing I'd encountered in years, and I didn't know what to do with that except try to keep you close in the only way I knew how. Claire pressed her hands against her face, trying to think through the exhaustion and anger and bone-deep weariness. I need time to process this, to figure out what I want. How much time? I don't know. Weeks, months, however long it takes. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you leave me alone. No surveillance, no security I don't ask for, no interventions in my life. You back off completely and let me breathe. Pain flashed across Roman's face, but he nodded. Okay. I mean it, Roman. If I find out you're watching me or manipulating things behind my scenes, I disappear. I take this baby somewhere you'll never find us, and you lose any chance of being part of their life. Understood. Claire started back toward the house. Roman followed a few steps behind, giving her space even in this small thing. Maria waited by the car. Taking you home? Please. The drive back felt longer than the drive out. Claire stared out the window watching the city lights blur past, thinking about babies and lies and crime bosses who didn't know how to care about people without breaking them. Her apartment felt smaller than before, like the walls had shifted closer during her absence. Claire locked the door, checked all the windows, and sat on her couch with her hands on her stomach. I don't know what to tell you, she whispered to the baby. That might be Roman's or might be some medical impossibility, or might be the result of something she still didn't fully understand. I don't know what kind of life we're going to have, but I promise I'll figure it out, somehow. Her phone rang. Not Roman's number this time. Maya. Claire answered. Hey. Hey yourself, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. We had brunch plans, remember? Brunch. Sunday. The normal life Claire had been living before everything exploded. It felt like years ago instead of a week. Something came up, Claire said. Family emergency. Is everything okay? Not really, but it will be. Do you need me to come over? I can bring wine and bad movies and we can trash talk whatever's bothering you. Claire looked around her apartment, at the normal, boring, safe life she'd built. Yeah, that would be good. Give me an hour. They hung up. Claire cleaned herself up, changed into comfortable clothes, tried to look less like someone who'd just discovered her entire life was a lie. By the time Maya knocked, she almost had it together. They drank tea instead of wine because Claire couldn't without explaining why. Watched movies and ate takeout, and for a few hours Claire let herself pretend she was just a normal woman with normal problems having a normal night with her best friend. Around midnight, Maya fell asleep on the couch. Claire covered her with a blanket and moved to the window. The street below was empty. No SUVs, No security. Roman keeping his promise to back off. She should feel relieved. Instead, she just felt alone. Her hand moved to her stomach again, that unconscious gesture that was becoming habit. In 5 months, there'd be a baby. A person who'd need her to have answers and stability and some kind of plan for the future. But tonight, she didn't have any of those things. Just questions and exhaustion and the weight of decisions she wasn't ready to make. So she went to bed and tried to sleep, and told herself tomorrow would bring clarity. It didn't. But it brought something close enough to keep going. Maya left the next morning with promises to check in later and a lingering look that said she knew Claire was hiding something. Claire let her go without explaining. How could she explain something she barely understood herself? The paternity test happened 3 days later at a clinic in Manhattan. Independent, just like Claire had demanded. Roman didn't show up personally, but sent Maria with an envelope containing his DNA sample. The technician took Claire's blood, logged everything with clinical efficiency, and said results would take a week. 7 days to find out if the impossible was true. Claire spent them working double shifts at the restaurant, avoiding her apartment during daylight hours, trying to build some kind of normal routine from the wreckage of her life. Her coworkers noticed she seemed different but didn't push. New York was good for that. People minded their business. On day 5, her manager pulled her aside during the dinner rush. "There's a man asking for you," he said. "Says it's important." Claire's stomach dropped, Roman breaking his promise already. She walked out to the dining area ready to tell him to leave and found someone else entirely. A man in his 40s, nondescript suit, federal agent written all over him. He stood when she approached. "Claire Whitmore, I'm Agent Santos, FBI. I need a few minutes of your time." Her mouth went dry. "About what?" "Ethan Vale, Roman DeLuca. The incident at the Brooklyn docks last week." He gestured to an empty booth. "Please, this won't take long." Claire sat because running would look worse. Santos slid in across from her, pulled out a tablet, started asking questions in a voice that suggested he already knew most of the answers. Where had she been the night of the exchange? Who'd arranged her presence there? What was her relationship to Roman DeLuca? Had she witnessed Victor Kozlov's death? She answered carefully. Admitted being at the docks, said she was there because she'd been caught up in Ethan's theft and Roman had offered protection. Denied witnessing the actual shooting, which was true. She'd been in the SUV when the gunfire started. Santos took notes, expression unreadable. "And the baby you're carrying? Ethan Vale's? That's personal. It became federal business when you got involved with 2 organized crime figures, so I'll ask again. Is Ethan Vale the father?" Claire met his eyes. "I thought he was. Now I'm not sure." "Because he's sterile." So the FBI knew. Of course they knew. They probably had medical records on everyone in Roman's organization going back decades. "Yes," she said, "which means the baby belongs to someone else, someone you're protecting." Santos leaned forward. "Roman DeLuca has been on our radar for 15 years. We've never been able to make anything stick because he's careful and well protected. But if you're carrying his child, that changes things. That gives you leverage, access, information we could use." Understanding hit cold and sharp. "You want me to inform on him?" "I want you to help us put a dangerous criminal behind bars where he belongs." "In exchange for what?" "Witness protection, new identity, financial support for you and the baby. Everything you need to disappear and start over somewhere DeLuca can never find you." Claire's hands clenched under the table. "And if I refuse?" "Then you're on your own when the next rival organization comes after you. Or when DeLuca decides you're a liability instead of an asset. Or when your baby becomes a target because of who their father is." Santos pushed a business card across the table. "Think about it. You have my number when you're ready to make the smart choice." He left. Claire sat in the booth staring at his card, thinking about leverage and protection and the 1,000 ways this situation could destroy her. She didn't call him. Instead, she went back to work, finished her shift, walked home through streets that felt more dangerous now that she knew the FBI was watching. Her apartment building came into view, and she stopped short. Roman sat on the front steps. He stood when he saw her, still keeping his distance but clearly done waiting for her to come to him. "What are you doing here?" Claire asked. "The FBI approached you today, Agent Santos." "How do you—" She stopped. Stupid question. Of course he knew. Roman probably had people watching the people who were watching him. You said you'd back off. I said I'd give you space. I didn't say I'd let the feds recruit you as an informant without warning you what that means. Claire climbed the steps, stopped 2 feet away from him. And what does it mean? It means they'll use you until you're not useful anymore, and then cut you loose. Witness protection sounds good on paper, but the reality is brutal. New city where you know nobody, new name, new history, raising a baby alone while looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life. As opposed to what? Staying connected to you and looking over my shoulder anyway? At least with me, you'd have actual protection. Resources. People who know how to handle threats before they reach you. And what would I owe you for that protection? Roman's jaw tightened. Nothing. You'd owe me nothing. Everyone wants something, Roman. The FBI wants information. You want what? A relationship with your child? Access to my life? What's the price? There is no price. I just want you both safe. Claire laughed, bitter and tired. You don't get to want things from me anymore. You lost that right when you sent Ethan to manipulate me. I know. Do you? Because you're standing here breaking your promise to give me space, telling me what to do about the FBI, acting like you have any say in my decisions. I'm standing here because Santos is dangerous and you need to know what you're walking into if you take his deal. Then tell me and leave. Roman ran a hand through his hair, that careful control slipping. If you inform on me, people die. Not just me. Everyone in my organization who the FBI considers expendable. Drivers, guards, people like Maria who've worked for my family for decades. They'll go down with me, and the feds won't care because they'll have their prize. That's not my problem. It is if you have a conscience. You can hate me, Claire. You have every right to. But those people didn't do anything except work for someone trying to survive in a world that doesn't forgive weakness. And if I don't help the FBI, what happens to me and the baby when the next Viktor Kozlov decides we're useful? I keep you safe, both of you, for as long as you need. Under your control. Under my protection. There's a difference. Claire pulled out Santos's business card, turned it over in her hands. He said witness protection would give me a new life, freedom from all of this. He lied. You'd just be trading one cage for another. At least in mine, you know the warden. She should tell him to leave, should choose the FBI and their promises of safety, even knowing they might be empty. Should walk away from Roman DeLuca and everything he represented before she got pulled deeper into a world that would eventually swallow her whole. Instead, she tore Santos's card in half. Roman's eyes widened slightly. What are you doing? Making a choice. Not because I trust you or forgive you or think this is going to work out fine, but because I'd rather deal with the devil I know than the one wearing a badge. She met his gaze. But I need something from you first. Anything. The truth. All of it. How I got pregnant, what really happened that night, why the DNA says this baby is yours when the circumstances make that impossible. No more evasions or half answers. I need to know. Roman was quiet for a long moment. Then he gestured toward the street where his car waited. Come with me. I'll show you. Claire hesitated. Getting in a car with Roman felt like crossing a line she couldn't uncross, but staying ignorant felt worse. She got in. They drove to a building in Midtown. Luxury high-rise doorman who nodded at Roman like he was expected, up to the 20th floor where Roman unlocked a door onto an apartment that was clearly a safe house. Furnished, but impersonal. The kind of place you brought people who needed to disappear for a while. This is where I took you that night, Roman said, after the bar. Claire walked inside slowly, looking for anything familiar. Nothing. Just neutral furniture and blank walls that triggered no memories. I had medical staff here, Roman continued. Standard procedure for drug-related incidents. They monitored you, made sure the substance wasn't going to cause lasting damage. I stayed in the other room working while they did their job. And around 3 in the morning, you woke up, confused but conscious. Asked where you were, what had happened. I explained you'd been drugged, that you were safe, that someone would take you home in the morning. Claire's heart raced. What did I say? You cried. Said you didn't understand why someone would do that to you. I told you it wasn't your fault. Roman moved to the window, looking out at the city. Then you asked me to stay with you. Said you didn't want to be alone. So you stayed. In the chair by the bed. You fell back asleep within minutes. I thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. Roman turned to face her. Around dawn, you woke up again. More alert this time. You looked at me and said thank you for keeping you safe. And then you... He stopped. I what? You kissed me. Claire's breath caught. What? You were still affected by the drugs. Not thinking clearly. I told you to go back to sleep, that we'd talk in the morning when you were sober. You apologized and passed out again. When you woke up a few hours later, you didn't remember any of it. Not the kiss, not the conversation, nothing after the bar. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were embarrassed enough about getting drunk. I didn't want to add to that by explaining you'd kissed a stranger while drugged. So I had Ethan take you home and I tried to forget it happened. Claire pressed both hands to her temples. One kiss. While I was drugged. That's supposed to explain pregnancy? No, but the medical staff ran tests that night. Standard protocol. One of those tests showed you were ovulating. Perfect timing for conception if what? If we had sex? We didn't, Roman. You just said you stayed in the chair. I know what I said, but DNA doesn't lie and the timeline matches. Which means either something happened I don't remember, or there's an explanation we haven't considered yet. Like what? Roman pulled out his phone, showed her a file. Medical records from that night. Tests, results, notes from the staff who'd monitored her. One line jumped out. Patient given emergency contraception as precautionary measure due to nature of drugging substance and potential assault risk. Claire's vision blurred. They gave me Plan B. Standard procedure for this kind of situation. In case something happened before we got to you. Roman's voice was careful. But Plan B isn't always effective. Sometimes it fails. And sometimes it doesn't explain pregnancy that happened before it was administered. Claire looked up at him. If I was already pregnant when they gave me that medication, it wouldn't have worked. Which means conception happened before that night, before the bar. Understanding dawned in Roman's eyes. Before Ethan took you out. Which means the father... Claire stopped. Let the implications settle. Run the timeline again. When did Ethan start dating me? 3 months before the bar incident, right after I sent him to approach you. And you said you had medical records confirming he was sterile. From his childhood illness, yes. Get those records, now. Roman made a call. 10 minutes later, his phone buzzed with files sent from whoever kept his medical archives. He pulled them up, started reading, and his expression went cold. What? Claire demanded. The sterility diagnosis was from when he was 12, based on complications from mumps. Roman kept scrolling. But there's a note here from a follow-up exam 5 years ago. Sperm count had recovered. He wasn't sterile anymore. The words hung in the air like a bomb. He lied, Claire whispered. Ethan lied to you about being sterile. Or he didn't know. Sometimes these things resolve on their own. Roman set down his phone. Either way, the baby isn't mine, it's his. Relief and horror crashed together. Claire sat down hard on the couch, trying to process. Not Roman's baby, Ethan's. Conceived naturally during their relationship before everything exploded. The DNA test that said Roman was the father must have been wrong or contaminated or... Wait, she said. You told me the DNA was conclusive. How could it be wrong? Roman's face went carefully blank. It wasn't wrong. But you just said... I said Ethan's medical records showed recovered fertility. I didn't say the DNA test was incorrect. He sat down beside her. Claire, there's something else you need to know about my family. About me. What? My father had a brother, twin brother, who died 30 years ago in a car accident. Twins share nearly identical DNA. Claire's blood went cold. What are you saying? I'm saying if Ethan is my cousin, if his father was my uncle and nobody knew because of family secrets and cover-ups, then his DNA and mine would be similar enough to confuse a paternity test, similar enough to make it look like the baby was mine when it's actually his. The pieces fell into place with terrible clarity. Roman's father having a twin who died young. Ethan working for Roman but never questioning the connection. The DNA showing Roman as the father when timing suggested someone else. Ethan is your cousin, Claire said numbly. I think so. I need to confirm with family records, but the timing makes sense.
My uncle died when I was 5. If he had a son nobody knew about, if that son grew up and eventually came to work for me without realizing the connection, then the baby is Ethan's, not yours. Yes, Claire started laughing. Couldn't help it. The sheer absurdity of it all.
6 months of lies and manipulation and crime bosses and Russians, all building to the revelation that the baby belonged to exactly who she'd thought it belonged to before everything went sideways. "This is insane," she said through the laughter that was threatening to become crying. "All of this, everything that's happened, and it turns out the simple answer was right all along." Roman didn't laugh. "I'm sorry for all of it, for sending Ethan to you, for keeping secrets, for making you think you were carrying my child when it was his all along." "Why did you do it?" "Really?" "Not the surveillance excuse, the truth." He was quiet for so long Claire thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, "Because I met you at that fundraiser and you were kind to me. Not because of who I was or what I could do for you, just because that's who you are. And I wanted that in my life, even though I had no right to it." "So you tried to steal it?" "Yes." "And now?" "Now you know the truth, all of it, and you get to decide what happens next." Claire stood, walked to the window, stared down at the city 20 floors below. Somewhere down there was her apartment, her job, her normal life waiting to be reclaimed. Somewhere else was Ethan, probably dead or wishing he was. And here was Roman, a crime boss who'd orchestrated everything and somehow still managed to be honest about it in the end. "I want to raise this baby alone," she said, "away from all of this. No mob connections, no surveillance, no protection I didn't ask for. Just me and my child living a boring, normal life. Okay? I want your help getting established somewhere new. Different city, clean start, enough money that I don't have to work 3 jobs to survive. But after that, you disappear. No checking in, no surprise visits, no involvement of any kind." "Okay. And I want you to make sure the FBI stops looking at me as a potential informant. Handle it however you need to, but make it go away." Roman nodded. "Done. Anything else?" "One more thing." Claire turned to face him. "I want you to promise me that if this baby ever comes looking for answers about their father, you'll tell them the truth, not the cover story, not some sanitized version, the actual truth about who Ethan was and what he did." "I promise. Because this baby deserves to know where they came from, even if it's ugly, even if it's complicated." "I agree." Claire crossed back to him, stopped close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes. The weight of running an empire built on violence and secrets. The loneliness of being someone who couldn't let anyone close without destroying them. "You're a good man trapped in a bad life," she said quietly. "I hope someday you find a way out." "I won't, but I appreciate the sentiment." She left him standing there in the safe house apartment where she'd been drugged and protected and unknowingly started the chain of events that would lead here. Outside, the city was waking up to another day. Traffic and noise and millions of people living their lives without knowing about the darkness underneath. Claire walked until she found a subway station, rode back to her neighborhood, climbed 4 flights to her apartment. It looked the same as always, small, shabby, safe. She called Maya. "Hey," her friend answered. "Everything okay? You've been weird lately." "I need to tell you something. Can you come over?" "Give me 20 minutes." Maya showed up in 15, took one look at Claire's face, and pulled her into a hug. They sat on the couch, and Claire told her everything. The pregnancy, Ethan's disappearance, Roman's protection, the FBI approach, the revelation about paternity and family secrets and crime empires built on lies. Maya listened without interrupting until the whole story was out. "So you're keeping the baby," she said finally. "Yes." "And moving away." "Yes." "And never seeing Roman DeLuca again." "That's the plan." Maya was quiet for a moment. "Do you love him?" The question caught Claire off guard. "What?" "Roman. Do you love him? Because the way you talk about him, it sounds like maybe you do." "I barely know him. Everything between us has been lies and manipulation and protection. And honesty when it mattered, and giving you choices instead of making them for you." Maya squeezed her hand. "I'm not saying trust him. I'm saying be honest with yourself about what you're feeling before you walk away. It doesn't matter what I feel. This baby deserves better than being raised in his world. Agreed. But you deserve happiness too. And if he makes you happy, he doesn't. He can't. This whole thing is impossible. Maya didn't argue, just held her hand while Claire cried for the third time in 2 weeks. For Ethan and the relationship that never existed. For Roman and the connection that couldn't survive reality. For herself and the future she'd have to build from wreckage and hope. 2 weeks later, Claire stood in an apartment in Portland, looking out at a view of mountains and trees and space to breathe. Roman had arranged everything just like he'd promised. New identity, clean credit history, enough money in a trust fund to live comfortably while raising a baby alone. Maria had driven her to the airport, hugged her goodbye with tears in her eyes, pressed a phone number into her hand. In case you ever need anything, she'd said, or if the baby wants to know their history when they're old enough. Claire had taken it. Hadn't called it yet, but kept it saved in her contacts just in case. The apartment was smaller than Roman's estate, but bigger than her studio in New York. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a kitchen with actual counter space. Room for a baby to grow up safe and loved, and far away from crime bosses and Russians and federal agents looking for informants. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. Hello? Miss Whitmore? Agent Santos. I wanted to let you know we're closing our investigation into your involvement with Roman DeLuca. No charges will be filed. You're free to move on with your life. How did you get this number? We're the FBI, but this is the last time you'll hear from me. Good luck with the baby. He hung up before she could respond. Roman keeping his promise, handling the FBI so she could disappear without looking over her shoulder. One last act of protection before letting her go. Claire set down her phone and pressed her hand against her stomach. 5 months along now, showing enough that strangers smiled at her in grocery stores. The baby moved sometimes, little flutters that felt like hope. Just you and me, she whispered. We're going to be okay. She believed it. Most days. 3 months later, Claire gave birth to a daughter. 7 pounds, healthy lungs, eyes that would eventually settle into the same blue as Ethan's had been. She named her Hope because it felt right, because hope was what had gotten her through everything and what would carry them both forward. Maya flew out to help during the first terrible weeks of no sleep and constant feeding. They sat together on the couch at 2 a.m, Claire nursing while Maya dozed beside her. Have you heard from him? Maya asked during one of those late-night conversations. Claire knew who she meant. No. Do you want to? I don't know. Sometimes I think about calling, telling him she's here, that she's healthy, that we're okay. But I promised myself I'd stay away, give her a normal life. Normal is overrated, and she deserves to know her history when she's ready. Claire looked down at Hope's tiny face, peaceful in sleep. Maybe someday, when she's old enough to understand. Or maybe sooner. When you're ready. The idea sat between them like a possibility waiting to be chosen. Claire didn't call Roman that night, or the next week, or the month after that, but she kept Maria's number, kept the trust fund Roman had set up, kept the knowledge that somewhere in New York, a crime boss who'd tried to steal her life had ended up giving her the means to build a new one. Hope turned 6 months old, started sitting up, smiling at strangers, showing personality that was all her own. Claire got a job at a bookstore, made friends with other parents at the playground, built something that looked like the normal life she'd wanted. It was good. It was safe. It was also incomplete in ways she didn't want to examine too closely. On Hope's first birthday, Claire made a decision. She called Maria. Hello? The familiar voice, warm and surprised. It's Claire Whitmore. Claire, I've been hoping you'd call. How are you? How's the baby? She's good. We're good. I was wondering... She stopped, started again. I was wondering if Roman would want to meet her. Not as her father, just as someone who helped us when we needed it. Maria was quiet for a moment. He'd like that very much. When? Whenever works for him. I'll arrange something. Neutral territory. No pressure. They met 3 weeks later in a park in Seattle, halfway between Portland and wherever Roman had come from. He stood by a fountain wearing jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suits, looking almost normal except for the 2 security guards trying to be invisible nearby. Claire approached with Hope on her hip. The baby stared at Roman with solemn eyes, taking in this stranger who was somehow familiar in ways genetics whispered about. "Hi," Claire said. "Hi." Roman's eyes went to Hope, something complicated crossing his face. "She's beautiful." "Thank you, Hope. This is Roman. Can you say hi?" Hope buried her face in Claire's shoulder, suddenly shy. Roman smiled. "It's okay. I'm a stranger. She's smart to be cautious." They sat on a bench while Hope warmed up slowly, played with a ball, chased pigeons, eventually let Roman hold her when she got tired. He was careful with her, gentle in a way that surprised Claire, even though maybe it shouldn't have. "Thank you for reaching out," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either, but Maya was right. Hope deserves to know where she came from, all of it, even the complicated parts." "And me? Where do I fit in this?" Claire watched her daughter play with Roman's watch, fascinated by the way it caught the light. "I don't know yet, but I think we figure it out as we go." "No expectations?" "No expectations, just honesty and time and seeing what works." Roman nodded slowly. "I can do that." They stayed in the park for an hour, talking carefully about safe topics. Claire's job, the apartment, Hope's milestones. Roman's businesses, the ones he was slowly making legitimate. The empire he was trying to transform into something his children could inherit without shame. When Hope started getting fussy, Claire stood to leave. "Same time next month?" Roman asked. "If you want." "I want." Claire strapped Hope into her car seat, drove back to Portland thinking about second chances and complicated families, and the fact that normal was overrated anyway. They met monthly after that. Sometimes in Seattle, sometimes Portland, once in San Francisco when Roman had business nearby. Hope grew to recognize him, smile when he showed up, eventually call him Ro in her toddler pronunciation. Claire grew to trust that he meant what he said about no expectations. He never pushed for more time than she offered, never tried to control decisions about Hope's life, never brought his world of crime and violence anywhere near them. 2 years after their first meeting, Claire invited him to Hope's birthday party in Portland. Just a small gathering with Maya and a few mom friends and their kids. Roman showed up with an age-appropriate gift and spent the afternoon making small talk with civilians who had no idea who he was. Later, after everyone left and Hope was in bed, he helped Claire clean up. "Thank you for including me," he said, washing dishes while she dried. "Thank you for being someone worth including. I'm trying to be better than my father, to build something that won't destroy everyone it touches." "How's that going?" "Slowly, but progress is progress." Claire set down her towel. "I need to tell you something." Roman turned off the water, giving her his full attention. "I forgive you," she said. "For the surveillance and the lies and using me as bait, all of it, I forgive you." "You don't have to I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me." Because holding on to anger was exhausting, and I'm tired of carrying it around. Roman was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you." "You're welcome." They finished the dishes in comfortable silence. Roman left shortly after, back to whatever flight would take him to New York and the empire that still needed managing. Claire locked the door behind him and checked on Hope one more time. Her daughter slept peacefully, surrounded by birthday presents and the love of people who'd shown up to celebrate her. This life wasn't what Claire had imagined 3 years ago. It was stranger and more complicated and built on foundations she still didn't fully understand. But it was theirs. She'd chosen it, built it, protected it from everything that tried to tear it down. And somehow, impossibly, it had become good. She climbed into bed and fell asleep thinking about the future. About Hope growing up strong and safe and loved. About Roman slowly transforming his empire into something legitimate. About herself, finally at peace with the messy reality of her life instead of chasing the fantasy of what it should have been. Outside, the city hummed with ordinary life. Inside, a mother and daughter slept safe in an apartment bought with a crime boss's protection and maintained through a survivor's determination. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. And enough, Claire had learned, was sometimes the best you could hope for. The story ended not with a fairy tale resolution, but with real life continuing. Complicated, messy, full of people trying their best, and sometimes failing and getting up to try again anyway. Hope would grow up knowing her father had made terrible choices. She'd know Roman had made different terrible choices. And she'd know her mother had survived all of it and built something beautiful from the wreckage. That knowledge would shape her, make her stronger. Teach her that people were more than their worst moments and families could be built from the strangest materials. Years later, when Hope was old enough to ask questions, Claire would tell her everything, the whole truth without decoration. And Hope would understand that she came from chaos and love and survival, and that all of it together had made her possible. But that was a conversation for the future. Tonight, Claire just slept, peacefully, finally free from the fear that had defined her life for so long. And in New York, Roman sat in his office looking at a photo on his phone, Claire and Hope at the birthday party, both smiling. He saved it to a folder he kept locked and encrypted, then went back to the work of transforming his father's empire into something his daughter could be proud of someday. Because that's what you did when you loved people. You became better, slowly, imperfectly, but persistently. The world kept turning, people kept making choices. And sometimes, impossibly, those choices led to something like happiness. Not perfect, not simple, but real. And real was all anyone could ask for.